there are many young boys and girls who don't know what to do with their lives. And then we talk to them about the 4 circles. And I think it's a very easy tool to put your Ikigai in the center. So we start by the circle of what you love. When you know clearly what you love, you have a very important clue. Second circle is what you are good at. It's the circle of the talent. Then there is a third circle, the circle of the money. When you have a passion, if you love to do something and you are good at that, then maybe you want to make a profession out of that. And the fourth circle is what the world needs, and actually is the real circle of purpose. And you can start from that. You can say, I think the world needs kindness because I see that there are 2 worlds, that there are many people insulting each other, that there is a lot of aggressivity on TV, and how, from my talent, from my purpose, I can give a bit of kindness to the world. So when we work with the 4 circles, then we can create a map of Ikigai somehow.
Héctor, Francis, welcome to the Chase Jarvis Live Show. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
This is a global phone call, is it not? I think, where are each of you reporting in from today?
In fact, I'm traveling now. So I'm not in Tokyo, I'm in Europe. But yeah, I should be in Tokyo. It's my hometown.
Normally Tokyo. And Francis?
I am talking to you from Barcelona. Is the city where I was born. I travel a lot for lectures and for many things and book festivals. But right now I am back in Barcelona.
One of my favorite European cities. That's where I first told my wife that I loved her. So it's a very near and dear spot to us personally. And I'd love to go back anytime possible. So thank you for joining us from very far distances. And you both are on the show today because you've made some pretty significant contributions to my life. And I would argue to the creative and entrepreneurial universe based on some of the research and the books that you've written. But in your own words, I'm wondering if you can articulate a little bit about each of your passions, what you study, and tell us a little bit about the new book.
Yes, I would say that before having an Ikigai, my only purpose in life was traveling. So when I was in a train, in an airplane, walking in my bicycle, the only meaning that I had for my life was going from here to there, finding new places, meeting new people. And I was always very curious about how people live and think and feel in other places of the world. And because of that, in my second trip to Japan, I got to know Héctor, that he will explain his own story. And this was the beginning of a very long friendship.
Yes, and before that, you were more into India, right? You were into traveling to India. That's how your first. Francis is a novelist, so his first novel was written. So Francis has been always like a writer, and for me, I was originally my passion, and still is computers. I was a computer nerd. Since I was 6 years old, I was programming in BASIC and became a software engineer and went to Tokyo and became a software engineer in Tokyo. I was working as a software engineer for a long time until things in destiny made me meet Francesc, and slowly I became a writer, which is like I also love. And I think in the middle, in the intersection, I had photography, that I think is the machine. The machine is engineering, the camera. And when I started with photography, I was obsessing a lot about the camera. If the lens is good, the camera is good. And after many years, I become more like, that's not what matters. Or it matters a little bit, but the other things are also very important. And I think that's what the artist mind and the engineer mind is, a mix. and that's where Francesc helped me a lot. And I think that's how the Ikigai book became like a balanced book. Like it's not too too nerdy, and it's not too artistic. It's in the middle.
And without sharing too much of our past, you've been in my creative community for a long time. For we're talking about 20 years, maybe back in the Flickr days. Thank you for sharing that. You said when you moved to Tokyo. I love this intersection of art and engineering, of art and science, of art and commerce in many ways. And you've each referenced in your introduction the concept of Ikigai. And what I will do is let people know that you've written the leading book on the subject, more than 1 million copies sold. It's one of the reasons that I first became aware that you all were collaborating and writing on this. And it is an interesting, a fascinating intersection of so many things. And even the concept itself is an intersection of a couple different aspects of our personal and professional, our interests and our passions. I'm wondering, for those who might be new to the concept of Ikigai, can you explain it for us?
Yes, Ikigai is just it is simply a Japanese word, but I think I always think about Japanese words. When I started learning Japanese, I always was attracted to words that were almost untranslatable. And there are many of those. Or maybe that you can translate them, but you need a full sentence. For example, Ikigai means your reason for being or your purpose in life. You need a full sentence. So if I meet you, Chase, and ask you, what is your purpose in life? What is your reason for being? It's too long. You can just ask, what is your Ikigai? It's more like it condenses information. That's maybe a little bit of my uh, computer science background. I like that it's concrete. And you can use that with kids too. Like, what do you want to be when you are big? You can use just what is your ikigai, and I think it's more. It will make kids think deeper about like what do they really love doing and what they want to dedicate their lives to. And that's iki. Gai is a composed word in Japanese. Iki means a living thing in general. It doesn't have to be a human being. For example, a tree or a table or a house can have an ikigai too. And gai is like willing to live. It's like the will to live. So that's the ikigai, the purpose in general.
And then, Francis, could you talk a little bit about the components of Ikigai that you talk a lot about in the book? Because that, if that was the, the breakdown of the word, let's talk about the concept as this utility and passion and what the world needs and the intersection of those things.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Since we published the book for the first time, maybe it's 7, 8 years ago, we have given many interviews, workshops, we have visited schools, universities, and there are many young boys and girls who don't know what to do with their lives. And then we talk to them about the 4 circles. And I think it's a very easy tool to put your ikigai in the center. So we start by the circle of what you love. When you know clearly what you love, you have a very important clue. If you are very passionate about music, about writing, about traveling, it can be the beginning of your path to ikigai. Second circle is what you are good at. It's the circle of the talent. So you explore what you have inside yourself. If for you it's very easy to communicate, or maybe you are very good in a synthesis of data, or you are good listening to people and you can be a great therapist or something like that. Then there is a third circle, the circle of the money. When you have a passion, if you love to do something and you are good at that, then maybe you want to make a profession out of that. And they ask, how can I live from that? Especially if you are an artist, if you are beginning with something that is, it doesn't seem so easy to convert it in money. And the fourth circle is what the world needs, and actually is the real circle of purpose. And you can start from that. You can say, I think the world needs kindness, because I see that there are two worlds, that there are many people insulting each other, that there is a lot of aggressivity on TV, and how, from my talent, from my purpose, I can give a bit of kindness to the world. So when we work with the four circles, then we can create a map of Ikigai somehow.
It gives you ideas to start. And we always say that it doesn't need to be, you don't need to get frustrated if you don't know immediately. It will be in your subconscious, maybe later when you are taking a shower or walking. And then this, if you do the exercise of the four circles that we say, you write down like what you love, what you're good at, what you can make money with, what the world needs. And what the world needs doesn't need to be like something very big. It can be like what your, I don't know, your friend needs or your grandma needs. You can start small. You can start helping others. That's the key.
Yeah, um, that intersection of those four circles has been very powerful. I've prescribed it many times. I think I put it in my last book, Creative Calling, because I think like you said, there's this one word that encompasses so much, and we don't really have that in our world. And you hit the nail on the head with the concept of so many people don't know this area of interest or passion, and there is a certain stress about it. And I'm wondering, what advice would you have for people who are stressed out about not knowing their thing, or they see other people who are tapped into their interest and passion and purpose, and it can often be frustrating and disorienting for people who don't know that about themselves. Where would you invite someone like that to start?
I would say that it's a matter of time. You cannot get your Ikigai from today to tomorrow. You need a time of exploration, because if you don't know yourself, you cannot know your priorities, and it's very difficult to know what is your purpose in life. So you need curiosity, you need a bit of self knowledge, and then you can work like science, trying many things. Maybe then you say, this is not, this is not, this is not, and then something happens that you feel something different inside you. So actually, it's a matter of trying many options, meeting many different people, because maybe you are with a photographer together and you are helping him, her, and then there is like something inside you that you have the wish to try that. So especially if it's young people, I always say Ikigai is not coming for you to the sofa and to your cell phone. So you need to go out, you need to experience, you need to know new people, you need to contribute, to volunteer. The more you move, the easiest is that you can find your Ikigai.
And then I would add to this another hint comes from this. I'm sure all your community, everyone knows, but the state of flow that I think almost everyone knows what it means these days. But as a reminder, is that you get into doing something and time flies. After 1 2 hours, you realize that it feels like 10 minutes. That's like Francis said about like we have to know ourselves. So maybe look back in your life, like when were those times that you were doing something and time was flying? Maybe you had a hobby when you were 15 years old and it felt like that and you forgot because you got busy with work in your 30s. Maybe you can just do an exercise of reminding what activities or what things in your life make your time fly, and that's I have that that's a very good sensor for myself to know if I love something or not, because it sounds very easy. Oh, I love this, but maybe you don't. It's like we are very easy to fool ourselves. Our friends know better.
Well, it's so true. And culture does a lot of the work. And of course, we do the dirtiest work on ourselves because we see other people doing things and we are largely seduced by attention that they might get for doing their
Mm.
thing. And we end up pretending to be interested in their thing because we see the results or seemingly the connection between what them doing that particular thing. But what we should really be looking, my understanding of the argument in Ikigai is that look, you're looking beneath the surface at the thing that actually lights you up. And this is why I love what you both have said, and it intersects with so much of my belief and my work, and it's hilarious to me. Just last night, uh, to Francis's point, was on my phone and I was like ranting, like someone just told me that they need to be in this phone, in this device, because this is where their industry happens, and I'm like, this is a mirage. This is where some connections happen. It's valuable in some particular ways, but all the best stuff is out there. You need to, that's where the things happen. And this can be helpful or it can be beneficial. Moving, bits around can be valuable. Digital goods are obviously a great way to get the word out, but you got to get off the couch, you've got to get off your phone, and you need to look to, and then, to Hector's point, to look into your past. Like, what were the things that lit you up, whether that was, 2 weeks ago or 10 years ago. And that's where the answers lie, not sort of out there. This is an inside job, right? It's an inside series of questions that we have to ask ourselves. How, you wrote obviously one of the best selling books ever on this topic. And I do want to get to your next book because it is absolutely transformative in the same way that Ikigai has been to so many. But before we move on to the next book, put a little bow around Ikigai. What was the relationship that you had with Ikigai such that you came together to write the book? Because that's, first of all, very unusual to have co-authors, and second of all, especially in around a Japanese concept. When I know you, Hector, you were living in Tokyo at the time, and you'd traveled there, Hector, or Francis, but how did this come together?
So I think randomness or serendipity. Francis is one of the, as Francis says, he has his hobby is to come to Japan like once or twice per year, and that's how we became friends. He came to Japan and we met for dinner, and then we met a second time. And I said, okay, I'm let's go for a walk. And we were in a Japanese garden in Tokyo, and I was going through a bad time in my life. I was dealing with a health issue in my tummy, and I explained everything to Frances. And then I explained to him the word ikigai in Japanese. And Frances said immediately, "We have to write a book together about ikigai because this will help you heal yourself." So Frances was doing therapy to cure me, like by writing a book, because I was thinking only about, okay, doctors will help me. So it was a combination, like doctors is okay, but then I wrote Ikigai, and it's never mentioned in the book. But I think many people ask, why is Ikigai so successful? It's like we really wrote it from our heart. I think that's one of the things. It's not that we never thought it would sell. We wrote it in Spanish. It was published in 2016 in Spain, and it was a small edition, and nobody. But it was written for with Frances to help me to heal myself and use the word ikigai. But at the beginning, I was very reluctant. Like, what? I'll be writing a book just about one word? And Frances said, "Yes, you will see. You will see." So Frances was right. That's how. So to put to your previous point, like we met in those times it was through a friend that followed me on Flickr or Twitter, and then we met. Frances and me, we met in the real world. Without meeting in the real world, nothing. And walking in a Japanese garden is where the inspiration came. It's not something that would happen only online.
Francis, what's your side of the story?
There was the concept of Ikigai. I was fascinated when Hector told me about that, but also there was a trip that was very inspirational because Hector is married to a woman of Okinawa, and father-in-law had said, "Why don't you go to Ogimi, that is in the Guinness Book of Records, as the number one place of longevity in the world? So the place in the world with the most centenarians every 1,000 inhabitants." And so there was a combination of Ikigai, but also exploring longevity. And we wanted to interview all these centenarians to know how do they live, what kind of relationships they have, what do they eat, how do they move. And so it was also a very interesting anthropological trip to see on the field what happened there.
Yes, so my mother-in-law is from the village. Her family is from the village of the oldest people in the world. So, yeah, probably my wife will outlive. She has the genes that will outlive us.
Well, there's something very special about that, and I feel like you all were way ahead of the longevity movement. There's a lot of talk in science now about it, and the intersection of science and metaphysics, and I guess the intersection of science and or quantum mechanics around longevity and connectedness. And I do find my own experience is such that I have seen so many people come alive when they tap into that special part of themselves that is at the center of Ikigai. And this is fascinating to me. And if my wife, Kate, were sitting right here, I feel like I could share her story, which she is in a field where she facilitates 5-day retreats that help other people solve, past difficult issues, and it combines the art and neuroscience in order to help them do that. And for the previous 20 years we worked very closely together, and the family business has been very successful. We travel over the world making commercials and whatnot, and people would say, "Oh, that must be so cool." And I could tell that she was always like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." And just in the last couple of years, to see her tap into her power, I feel like I saw not just healing or not just enthusiasm, but a deep sense of connectedness that has transformed her health. So the question is, when you were studying this stuff, did you find that when people are more in their purpose, that there is, I mean, Hector, you're here. I don't know if you're free of the challenge that you initially looked at trying to resolve through this process of exploring Ikigai, but what have you seen when people are in their purpose, and how does it affect their health and well-being?
Actually, to have a long life, you must have a powerful reason to do that. If you feel that your life is boring, it has no meaning, then you don't have motivation to take care of yourself. But these people in Ogimi, and normally everyone who has a very strong passion, a good ikigai, they want to live as many days as possible because they are enjoying life. They think that they are contributing. They have a direction. And then we have seen that these people eat better, they practice more sport, they have a lot of social life, and these are all the things that help living longer and healthier. So there is a direct relationship between having a purpose and having a young brain and having a longer expectation of living.
Yes, and we always say we are not. You were mentioning we are not scientists. We are travelers and very curious minds. And we mention in Ikigai. In fact, I like going deep into the research papers, and at the time of the writing of the book, pretty there was a lot of research in for some reason in England with the correlation of like you retire in Europe. We like to retire early and like have it's like the dream is to stop working and do nothing, and that works for 15 days. You go to the beach and relax, and then it gets boring because you have nothing to do, and people get depressed. And there is a correlation of like retirement when you're 60 or 65, and very not only death but having very like cancer, and maybe you had lucky and you can fix it. And once you get over that, you see that if you go to your 70s, the death rate goes down. So there is something about quitting and doing nothing that you feel like the purpose that has given you your work for until you were 60, it has gone. And now there are more there after the boom of like longevity and ikigai and everything. I know there's research now in several universities in Japan who are researching. They are using the word ikigai for the first time because Japanese were a little bit reluctant of using their own word, but now they're trying to find like, okay, people who have lost their ikigai, what happens to their health. So I think there will be better research in the future explaining these things. And for myself, I accepted what I have is like a chronic condition. So, but it has helped me a lot, my mind to reframe everything and not not being obsessed with what I have. So that's like, and I get the energy from writing now. That's my story. And Francesc, I think, is similar to maybe to your wife because Francesc Ikigai is in fact helping other people to find their Ikigai. So it's a Ikigai of making people find their Ikigai.
That's true. Actually, what I enjoyed most is discovering new talent. Sometimes I read something from a journalist or from somebody who writes me, and I tell her, you could write a novel. You have the talent to do that. And for me, empowering somebody to use a hidden treasure that maybe is unknown for this person is my biggest pleasure, I think. Trying to uncover what is inside you.
I think we are similar in that regard. And, I feel like this is probably also a very natural transition. Ikigai, if Ikigai is the Japanese version, Purushartha is the focus of the new book, which is called The Four-Way Path, a guide to Purushartha and India's spiritual traditions for a life of happiness, success, and purpose. So, is this an extension of Ikigai in the Indian tradition, or maybe you can give us a little more insight here because it's fascinating to me what you all have done with this connecting these seemingly unconnected cultures, and yet they're radically connected on this one particular topic.
You just said it there. Like we also thought they were different, but they're very connected somehow. That we are still wondering. What happened is that Ikigai, as you said, was very successful all around the world, but then something happened that started. You mentioned it has sold like more than 1 million copies all around the world, and then it started selling in India even more. So now in India alone, Ikigai has sold millions only in India, which is that was our own like, why is this happening? So that was the question inside me, why this is happening. And Francis, who likes to travel, he went to India many times to promote the book and do book tours. And I also went to India, and I kept asking people in India, why do you love the Ikigai book so much? Because it was for 3 years in a row, it was the top selling book in all categories everywhere in India, which is also crazy. I couldn't like. So, and I started looking deeper and deeper. And then I realized we started with the force. I realized that first, India has been thinking about purpose from before us. They know about Ikigai before us, and they've been dealing about purpose with their traditions since thousands of years ago. In fact, the word Purushartha, it means your purpose in life. So it's like they don't need. I was wondering, like, you don't need Ikigai. Why are you buying our book? Yeah, and they said because it's not preaching and it's very simple to understand. So then I started reading books about Indian philosophy, and it's true. It's very. There is not a simple book that tells you this is what is India about. There are many good books about certain things, Indian politics or Indian culture, but not about India, like the concept of purpose in India. And that's what it got me thinking, like how we can write about purpose, but from an Indian perspective instead of a Japanese perspective, and find. I always like finding like similarities. And when we went into the circles that Frances explained before, what you love doing, what you're good at, the money, and helping the world, then we realized it's not a perfect match, but also in India you have the concept, the four Purusharthas is the four pathway we call the book, is the Dharma, the Moksha, the Artha, and the Kama. They almost match the four circles of Ikigai. So that's the moment I said, okay, I have to write a book explaining that we have discovered the same, but the Indian people, they discovered it like thousands of years ago. So we dedicate this book to the Indian people, by the way. If we have Indian people listening to the podcast, it's like a book to India.
Well, it is. It's sort of a casting into the future because, as you mentioned, the book has been very successful there. But it's also a reaching into the past because, as you articulate, they've been studying this stuff for a very long time. Kama, Dharma, Artha, and Moksha. So I'm wondering, Francis, can you talk a little bit about are these exactly the same as Ikigai, or is there some expansion or some contracted uh, relationship between what you've discovered in the Indian
Come.
traditions and
Say they have different roots because actually India is the cradle of spirituality. 5,000, 6,000 years ago, they were thinking about happiness, about life and death. They were thinking about purpose. They were thinking about mental peace. So I would say that our first goal was how to explain this big spiritual universe that is India in a very simple way, choosing 8, 9 topics that are useful for everybody. And for instance, for us was very interesting the concept of attachment and desire and how this affects to our happiness. Because of that, we were exploring Buddhism, but also the sadhus, the letting go of all these pilgrims, because it connects with very modern issues. These two guys, the minimalists, actually, they are talking about topics that the sadhus in India have been doing thousands of years ago. And so, what we wanted to do was to put into a box the most interesting and useful tools of the Indian spirituality and to connect with some modern concepts and theories. And here, Hector was
Yes.
very useful writing about the CEOs of the technology, that many of them come from India nowadays. And it was a very interesting chapter for me because Hector wrote that.
Yes, technology companies now is becoming even more and more. Technology companies all around the world, they're being led by Indian people. That's also interesting. So one of the things that are different in the four circles of Ikigai and the four elements of the Purusharthas is that it has the Moksha is the one that we don't have in Ikigai, and is who am I? And that's I think what Frances said before, like about knowing ourselves is very, very important to at least know what you know everything else. It's like, who am I? And it sounds very simplistic, but there is a point in our lives. There's some people that maybe you never ask yourself, like answering the question, who am I, without saying your name and saying your profession is not that easy. It's like you have to start thinking, okay, like I am a person who does these things or who likes these things. You have to think deeper. And then we went into the connections of India with the ancient Greece, because the philosophers from Greece, they were also thinking about this question of in the Agora. It's like, who are you? Who am I? Is the beginnings of philosophy, and how we can apply them to these days. Because as you said, now we have all the like stimulation from the internet, and we are very attracted to many, many, many people, and we have so many role models that we try to imitate, because we are also imitation machines, humans. And then we don't stop a little bit to start thinking, who am I? And that's how the Indian culture has been saying that, like, slow down and sit and do nothing, and you have time to think, like, who am I?
Is that the only way to access that, to sit and do nothing, or
No, in fact, I said that like randomly. Sorry, like that's not. In fact, that doesn't work for me. Like saying it through, like many people say, I've tried many things, meditation, and for me, in fact, now I'm a lot into breathing exercises. And that's something I like a lot. And then something that works very good, and this is something I kept since I write a diary since I was 15 years old. And I think for myself, each person is different. But for myself, to know who am I write a diary, and then I look back, like, because there's some things that you repeat yourself if you write in a diary, even if it's like 2 3 sentences. I like the idea. In fact, this one I got it from Tim Ferriss. He said, maybe I'm changing it a little bit, but it's at the end of the day, just write 3 things that you loved doing this day today, and 3 things that you didn't like. And after 15 days, you look at your diary and you will see a pattern. Like you will see, okay, I love these things. Maybe I should do this more. I hate this person. Maybe I should not hang out with this person. And then you eliminate, because we are very easy to fool ourselves. So I like writing it down. And to calm myself, I like breathing exercises more than meditation for some reason.
yeah, the goal is not to be prescriptive here, and this is part of why I love the approach. I mean, what you did in, with the Japanese culture, now with the Indian culture, it's not about being prescriptive that this is the only way, and by extension, each of the practices, like the way that we come to know ourselves, and you prefer breath work to meditation, or if you're the Stoics, stillness is the key. You need to be quiet enough to be able to hear that voice inside of you, and regardless what the mechanism is, would you agree that we all have these things inside us, and that it's our primary job to discover, or rather uncover them? I'm curious what you would say to that, Francis.
And actually, the Indian culture knows it very well because it's their process of healing, of creativity, of discovery is always from inside to outside. So for me, Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, was the first psychologist in history because actually he's not speaking about God. He speaks about how our brain, how our mind works, and why we suffer, and why we attach to some desires, and what happens when you have too many friends. Actually, it's not so different, the quotes from Buddha, from what we can read from any modern psychologist. And because of that, for me, India actually My first trip to the East was India by the end of the 20th century. And I remember that I was always reading Jiddu Krishnamurti, Ramana Maharshi. And for me is the school of the inner knowledge. When you are in India, they have many different traditions with some common points. But what you learn there is what you said, Jarvis, that all answers are inside yourself, but you
Yeah.
must have the courage to go deep inside you and to see what happens there, what you find on the bottom.
And there are many different paths to excavate that, right? This is part of our, this is why, whether it's through journaling, I like to journal on what is it that I really want. I got that Tim Ferriss that you mentioned is a friend of mine. He directed me to James Clear, who journals every day on that same topic. And I started doing that. What is it that you really want? And you could say by extension, who are you? Because as you said, when you write on this every day, patterns emerge. What you liked yesterday, it shows up again, in, 2 weeks ago and 2 months ago, and that leaves clues. And as you articulated earlier, I don't remember which one of you, but what you did as a kid, there were times that you were absolutely lit up. And we talked about the experience of flow of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's, his well documented scientific experience, that or empirical experience, where we lose track of time and we get an extraordinary amount of work done in an extraordinarily short period of time because everything is happening effortlessly. Like, success leaves clues. Looking back into our past, whether that past was yesterday, 2 weeks ago, or 20 years ago, how, if you are not being prescriptive, if there are many ways to access this, can you, are there patterns? Like, is journaling, do you have like 3 or 4 things that you recommend as vectors for finding this? I love that you said you don't really get this from the couch earlier. I think that's great. I have the same thing. You can't learn this shit from the couch. You got to get, even though it's an inside journey, you've got to get outside.
Yes, I would say you have said journaling. This is
Mm-hmm.
very good means to know yourself. Actually, Stutz, the famous psychiatrist of Los Angeles,
Yes.
he puts it
Mm-hmm.
in the top of the pyramid. In the yourself part of your
Yeah.
healing is writing. So writing is something that everybody can do, and you cannot imagine how many things can you get from there. But also, we have said meditation. I am a very bad meditator. I get very bored with meditation, but my meditation is playing piano. If I play, I am not a good musician at all. But when I play with both hands, you cannot think because the left hand is doing one thing, the right hand is doing another thing. Then you are totally focused in something, even if what you play is not perfect. Then we could say also people who practice the forest bathing. That is another
Yeah.
Japanese word, Shinrin Yoku. So you go to the nature without cell phone, without trying not to think about what happened yesterday and what you have to do tonight, and you flow. And this is another kind of meditation. So I would say that any activity that disconnects you from the very urgent reality and the machines and what you have to do and what happened, then it's a source of creativity, because actually it's like being in front of a white canvas. If you don't give space, if you don't have time, Ikigai cannot come to you, because it's like trying to paint in a canvas that is full of other things. So first, we must let it go, and then we can let it come.
Then another one that everyone says is cultivating good friends, because they will probably know yourself more than you, and having good friends that would will tell you things that maybe are not pleasant, your blind spots. That's another one. And another analogy, you have all these tools and everything. Another analogy I like is the one that somehow, and this also for me has been a realization of the last 10, 20 years, I would say, that we are all, this is very human, I think, like all humans through history. We look at mentors and we travel, like Frances was, you travel to India, to China, all over the world. You read many books. You're trying to find something that will be the final solution and will be like the perfect, will, I don't know, like some kind of magic that will make you successful, rich, and super happy. And the realization is that that doesn't exist. It will never happen. It doesn't matter if you read 100 books and you meet 100 gurus, because we all have to climb our own mountain. That's what the analogy I like. And everyone's mountain is different. So you will find that maybe writing a diary will work for your mountain a little bit, but maybe like uh, like talking with people will help you more in your mountain, and then you will go to the top. In the top, you will be alone. You don't need anyone to bring you to the top. So that's, I think, an analogy I like the mountain that is your own one, which is, I think, is more beautiful because you have to build it yourself.
That's so true. And one of the things that I observe is people climbing the wrong mountain, right? I think that's one of the biggest
Okay, that's
problems
an,
in our
I
culture.
like that one.
That's a very nice concept. I like.
Yeah,
Yes, I
but
like that.
yeah,
That could be a title for a book, Climbing the Wrong Mountain. That's a good one.
and so many people, right? We see this, that, and this is, I have chronicled this in my most recent book, which is called Never Play It Safe. I was, thought that I was going to play professional soccer, and then I thought that I was going to go to medical school, knowing that while these were obvious, or the culture had told me that this was the stuff I was supposed to do, in each of those cases I spent, years off track, knowingly, or in the school, hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt, climbing somebody else's mountain. And it was so heartbreaking and simultaneously empowering. Again, no effort is ever wasted, right? However far up you are to someone else's mountain, it takes a lot of courage to walk back down and to find your own mountain. But that's where the best stuff is, right? It's on your own. It's on your own mountain.
Actually, this is something that the people working in Pixar know very well. People working with stories, with new movies, they
Mm-hmm.
need to work with a dynamic that is normally the same in any movie of Pixar. There is one thing that the main character wants, but there is another thing that is what he or she needs. And in the trip from one thing to the other, it's the beauty of the story. For instance, Toy Story, Woody wants to be again the favorite toy of the boy. But actually, what he needs is to be a friend, to become a good friend. And it happens to us in life. Sometimes we want many things, but we need other things. And wisdom is discovering actually what we need in the end.
All you need is love. Love. That's what you want to say now, Francis. It's all love. We want love.
That's all we need. If the Beatles were just around to write another version, or maybe it's perfect. Um, I just need to put another plug in here for the Four-Way Path. Congratulations on another masterwork. May this one go on to sell millions of copies as well. The subhead, I think, is really interesting. A guide to Purushartha and India's spiritual traditions, a life of happiness, success, and purpose. I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's lovely to actually connect with people that you've been a fan of their work for some time, not knowing each of you from other corners of the globe. I really, really appreciate it. Is there anywhere besides your books that you would steer people to learn a little bit more if they're curious?
I'm on Instagram. I think you can Instagram Ikigai book, and you'll find me too. Or Héctor García on Instagram or Google, and you'll find me.
and you can find me in Francesc Miralles with the blue tick, and they can find there what we are doing. If we are presenting somewhere in the world. Actually, in January and February 2025, I am traveling to India. Hector will probably stay
Thinking
here.
about it. But
Yeah, he's trying. He's trying.
Awesome. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for being with us today. We're big fans over here, and if we can do anything to support you in any of your endeavors, if you're on the road traveling, I hope that we cross paths, and please do stay in touch. Until next time, from myself and our creative community over here, thank you so much for helping us find our purpose, and that knowing that our past and success leaves clues. So we'll start by looking there, and appreciate you both. Thanks for being guests on the show.